Pretty angry today, Mike. I don't know, man. Sometimes, some days you just got to take the black pill. But I'm looking forward to hearing your takes on this. Let's begin with Jeffrey Epstein belonged to Intel. What do you think, Mike?
Forget it, Benny. It's Chinatown. It's uh
That's right.
well this is
I look forward to getting the razor in my to getting the razor in my face soon. Yeah. Okay. Well, what happens next?
no, it's this is the great unanswered question, and it's also um I think what you're expressing is what so many people feel on this. And I understand the frustration. I feel the same way that you do about Dan and Cash, and I think they're doing a phenomenal job on what is their traditional role, which is cleaning up crime and not engaging in domestic weaponization. I think when attacks pop off in the country, we don't really, in just a few short months, we really no longer have to worry about whether our own FBI was setting us up. I think this was
Yes.
a constant shadow over Christopher Wray under Trump one, obviously for the FBI for 60 years practically. Um, and they've done that with very few friends on the inside, given how outnumbered they are by the FBI rank and file. I think there is a intense desire from the MAGA base to have accountability for past FBI malfeasance beyond simply doing the job of federal law enforcement. And so it's a very heavy burden, uh, I think, on senior management for things that they are not, which is a little bit above and beyond what the typical day to day duties of the job are. I have long believed that the Epstein story is not so much an FBI story as it is a DOJ and CIA story, as well as the international networks that have been talked about so much. And so when the initial claims from Dan and Cash on this came out, my thought process was, well, you're not going to find anything at the FBI layer here because if this was CIA, you're going to have it shielded from FBI so that it doesn't give a predicate for DOJ action. But DOJ will be the holder of all the interagency chatter, all the interagency cables, all of the interagency dialogue. And so what we're hearing from the news last night is a much more serious and final opinion, it coming from Pam Bondi. Now, I still have questions about how exactly uh, how official this is, frankly, because Axios evidently got an exclusive. They posted what looked like an official DOJ document with the news story they published, but then within a few hours, the official document was a missing link. And I know that folks like Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch had been actively FOIAing the Justice Department for these documents for months, if not years. And I know that Tom Fitton has felt a little bit of a stab in the back that he feels that Axios was given an exclusive for things that should have just been responded to in a FOIA request from Judicial Watch. I mean, we can get to all that, but as to your direct question about whether or not Epstein did or didn't belong to intelligence, this is one of these unanswered questions that remains very much a slap in the face. I think to understand the Epstein story, you need to go back to the 1980s and at least back to, as you mentioned, the 2008 case when Jeffrey Epstein was arrested the first time, and one of the strangest plea deals in DOJ history was struck. The plea deal for Jeffrey Epstein was struck by Alex Acosta and the Miami DOJ before the FBI even finished its investigation. So they rushed this plea deal, which effectively got Jeffrey Epstein off before they even got most of the relevant evidence. At the time, there was a subpoena for Jeffrey Epstein's hard drives and computers, and defense counsel had been fighting that in court. They struck the plea deal before they even got the computers. In fact, one of the lead prosecutor, I believe Maria Villafana, uh, had bitterly fought Alex Acosta on this plea deal. She was the lead prosecutor on the case. There's email traffic with the senior lieutenants at DOJ saying, "Why are you meeting with defense counsel in private? How can you attempt to strike a plea deal before we've even concluded our investigation? We're still finding witnesses. We still don't even have most of the key evidence because um, the defense counsel are refusing to turn over the hard drives and computers. How can you make a plea deal when you don't even know what's on their computers? This is outrageous." And she was run over. She was, according to some of the email traffic from her conversations with the DOJ lieutenants that came out in a 350-page DOJ Office of Professional Responsibility report later, she was basically threatened for speaking up. And then and then Alex Acosta, who was the top dog, as you mentioned, 11 months. It was almost 11 and a half. This is basically the entire year's worth of emails, of incoming emails to Alex Acosta, turned up mysteriously gone. As soon as the Justice Department moved to look at them, they were gone, daddy, gone. I mean, this is like when Operation Crossfire Hurricane happened, and then suddenly all the text messages and emails all died at FBI. Once again, the FBI is, where evidence goes to die, and just like the system migration, server migration ended up eating all the inside evidence with Crossfire Hurricane. They did it just with Jeffrey Epstein, and no one can explain it. No one's attempted to retrieve the emails from there. It's like every time you know that a server is being migrated at DOJ, someone did some really nasty shish kebab. And the fact is this whole process has been so shady, and it's been so high profile now for so long that I don't know what they're expecting at the Trump DOJ level. This is long-term indigestion. Obviously, because Jeffrey Epstein is such a nasty figure, you can make up stories about him that have no basis in reality, and a lot of people are going to believe it because it's Epstein. And I understand that the mere fact of the scale of the conspiracy theories around Epstein kind of put the PR side of law enforcement in a bind. They want to be responsive to the facts of the case. They do not want to be responsive to public opinion. Justice should be blind, which is the right attitude. The issue is if you don't show your work, if you don't show us what you looked at in order to make your decision, we can't trust your work. We trust work, not words. And, it is now, it's been 6 months of the Trump administration, it's been half a year, and this was a major campaign issue. And we have not seen what DOJ has seen. We have not seen what FBI has seen. We have not seen anything from the CIA side of this. And meanwhile, all of Trump world sort of touches Epstein world from strange angles, which is another topic on this that maybe I can pause if you want to get to. But as to your immediate question about was Epstein an intelligence asset in some respect, I think undeniably the answer on that is yes. And the fact that we have seen really no attempt, or at least good faith attempt, to even humor the American people. What did DOJ query from CIA on this? They're going to come out with this conclusory statement about there's no anything. Okay, well, what did you ask John Ratcliffe? What queries did you put to the CIA system? At least let us make the excuses for you that you got stonewalled or there was nothing there because we see what you see. Why top down edicts without any sort of accompanying set of data dumps? Where's our WikiLeaks? Where's our Twitter files? Why do we get more transparency from, Elon Musk uh, taking over a private company in terms of federal government documents and emails than we get from our own democratically elected government?
Why would Jeffrey Epstein kill himself if he's innocent?
Well, of course, what they're saying is that he didn't kill himself, and there's no evidence on that. And this is another thing is
No, Mike. They're saying that he did kill himself. He absolutely killed himself.
right. That's
The
why
feds are saying he killed
right.
himself, and he killed himself for nothing because we have nothing on him because there was no
Well,
case. Even though we found him guilty already of sex trafficking and Ghislaine Maxwell guilty of sex trafficking, there's no case and there's no clients.
right.
And
Well,
the other problem that I have with this is that it does seem like it's entirely created. This seems like the deep state, whatever terminology you want to use, whatever pejorative you want to use. It seems like they're pulling one over. Everything from the binder release that had redacted information in it that was already public, like that was just a spitting in the face, right? That was an insult, okay, to the intelligence of everybody who received one of those binders. Friends of the show. I know that you received one of those binders for your birthday, so happy late birthday, Mike.
thank you.
This entire thing seems to be concocted to embarrass the Trump administration and to erode trust, to further erode trust with their supporters who thought that we'd actually see something here. And Mike, whoever leaked this to Axios, to break it through left-wing media is also an insult to us. And yet again colors this release as something that cannot be trusted. It's just been a bungle after bungle after bungle, and it's frustrating.
Right. Well, this gets me to the question of, was this actually, was this given to Axios, or was this sort of a rogue inside employee, or, in a way, almost hero inside employee who probably leaked it because they were stunned by it and maybe wanted to, I don't know, stop it or at least put some pressure on it. I mean, because they didn't name the source. It's not like this person was made a hero from it. I find it a little hard to believe that Axios would have voluntarily gotten this exclusive. I mean, they didn't get any statements on the record from DOJ officials about it, which suggests to me that it was a leak. I mean, if DOJ really wanted to give them the exclusive and they were proud and stood behind their work on this, you would typically see quotes from DOJ officials corroborating or providing additional color beyond what was published, and there was none of that, which leads me to believe that it was a leak. But I just come back to this point that I don't know what they're expecting in terms of the base's feelings about this. The Jeffrey Epstein died in 2019, and this was a campaign issue in 2024. It will be a campaign issue in 2028. It will be a campaign issue in 2032. It was a very, very strange sequence of events where as dark and as wide as the networks around Epstein are, you see our federal government constantly losing the kind of evidence they would never lose if they were prosecuting us.
Yes, Mike, the evidence that would have been splashed and carved into granite if they could get after a Mike Benz. Boy, man, they would have made sure that was plastered and printed on a daily basis on the front of the New York Times if you were part of this list.
So I want answers from the CIA on this. Why have I heard absolutely nothing? And
Can
this
you unpack
again,
that, please? Can you unpack
yes.
that? So, why is the CIA the skeleton key here?
Well, So starting with what we've covered, and then I'll trace it into the wider webs here. So in 2008, the sweetheart deal with Epstein was struck over the objections of the FBI. The DOJ basically reached into the case, met directly with the uh, defense lawyers for Epstein, who were basically the highest paid defense lawyers you can buy. Many of them had personal relations with the prosecutors. One of the defense counsel had dated one of the DOJ officials, and they had all sorts of personal connections. And then Alex Acosta was then being interviewed by the White House transition team in 2016 for 2017 for a cabinet level role. Alex Acosta went from being the Jeffrey Epstein uh, deal negotiator and the guy who overrode the FBI to give this sweetheart deal to Epstein to being a cabinet level secretary for Trump 1 in the Department of Labor. Now, the Department of Labor is another kind of strange place in the U.S. government. This is for unions. Organized crime and unions move together like peanut butter and jelly do. Alex Acosta had also been the dean of the law school for Florida International University, which is a major CIA recruiting hub. Folks like Juan Guaido, for example, who was the CIA-backed candidate for Venezuela, is now at FIU. FIU is a very famous recruiting ground for CIA operations in Latin America. And it's also close to where Jeffrey Epstein lived when he was also in South Florida. Jeffrey Epstein runs through those same Latin America CIA networks, I should note. It was Jeffrey Epstein that was working with Adnan Khashoggi, the CIA-backed weapons dealer for Iran-Contra, very close to the Bush family and the Saudi royal family. So Jeffrey Epstein is connected to Iran-Contra, the CIA gun running and drug running operation from the early 1980s. In 1985, Jeffrey Epstein effectively took over from Arthur Shapiro. Arthur Shapiro was the tax attorney for Les Wexner. Les Wexner, the billionaire who was the head of Limited Brands, the Victoria's Secret. At one point, this was the largest retail chain in all of America. And Jeffrey Epstein, after Arthur Shapiro, the tax lawyer for Les Wexner, was gunned down in a Chicagoland-style murder in Columbus, Ohio, in 1985, the day before he was set to testify to a grand jury IRS investigation. See, basically, he had run the Wexner estate's tax and accounting, and then the day he had been dogged by the IRS for about 7 years. The day before he was set to testify, he was mysteriously murdered. It was at that point that Jeffrey Epstein appeared in the picture and began to effectively work his way up to getting power of attorney over the entire Epstein estate, and then mysteriously go on to manage billions or hundreds of millions of dollars for the Wexner network through there. Epstein then became involved even more directly in intelligence adjacent work. He was involved in the negotiation of the relocation of the very Iran-Contra CIA airline company. This is Continental Air Services, Air America. The CIA proprietary airlines in Miami that closed up after the Iran-Contra scandal in the 1980s. They were moved to Columbus, Ohio, the hometown of Les Wexner. That move of the CIA proprietary airline was negotiated by Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, what kind of access could you and I get to do that sort of thing? And that was said to to do economic development for Columbus, Ohio, because it was moved to the Rickenbacker Air Force Base in order to basically give the Wexner retail brands access to markets in Hong Kong and faraway distances like that. Well, Hong Kong is another one of these, very frequent black market CIA traffic zones. The Hong Kong was taken over by the British through the Opium Wars and became a major narco trafficking zone through there. And once again, you're back to sort of guns and drugs. And the fact is you and I can't get that sort of access as normal civilians. Adnan, you and I can't just sort of represent Adnan Khashoggi and CIA-backed, gun runners, and then go on to have all these connections to both the Bill Clinton machine and then the Donald Trump machine. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein really flew too close to the sun in the 1990s when he became the money bundler for Bill Clinton in the 1990s and was, flying around the world with Clinton. And the fact is Epstein's adjacency to all of these intelligence nodes, combined with the head DOJ official saying that he was told to back off Epstein because he belonged to intelligence, it's above my pay grade. Then back to the Acosta story here. So Alex Acosta was then questioned about this when I believe it was the Daily Beast reported that that's what he told the transition team. And Alex Acosta's response to being questioned about that intelligence statement was very curious. He didn't deny it when he was asked about it publicly. He said, "I'm not allowed to talk about that. There are DOJ rules about ethics rules about what I'm allowed to say publicly. But a lot of people are taking what I said out of context and going down rabbit holes. But I'm not allowed to either confirm or deny." Now, why would you not be able to deny if that was not the case? That was over 10 years before. He was questioned about that in 2019. The case had already been closed. The settlement had already been reached. It had been 11 years. And, if this was something that was fully untrue, there's no reason that you can't say, yeah, no, he didn't. He was not a CIA asset or an asset of another foreign government. But the fact is, we don't even know who Alex Acosta talked to. Now the final wrap up on this, and the official story is that in 2020, the Justice Department, responding to the heat of the Alex Acosta affair, did this 350-page written report. This is how we know about the 11-month data gap in Acosta's emails. And there's one footnote in the 350-page document. This is all we've gotten in the 6 years since Epstein did or didn't kill himself about the CIA connection. One footnote in a 350-page document that said from DOJ. Now, this was Bill Barr's DOJ. Bill Barr spent the first 7 years of his career in the CIA. He was referred to as the CIA's mop-up man by the Washington Post for his role in covering up Iran-Contra and the CIA's role in that. One footnote, and it says, we asked Acosta about whether or not there was truth to Daily Beast reporting about Jeffrey Epstein being potentially an intelligence asset for helping the FBI on a related white-collar financial crime investigation. And Acosta said, we asked him if he had knowledge about that. And he said no. Acosta said no, and that we offered Acosta a classified briefing room if he had more to say, and he had nothing more to say. Now, that gives you absolutely nothing. First of all, softball question of the century. Do you have any knowledge about Epstein being an intelligence asset in a unrelated white-collar financial crime investigation? Well, first of all, even if you were to ask him, do you have knowledge that Jeffrey Epstein is an intelligence asset? Any defense attorney worth his salt will tell you, even if you were told that he belonged to intelligence, the answer to that question is no. You do not have knowledge. You have been told something secondhand through hearsay. You took some action on the basis of it, but you don't have firsthand personal knowledge of it. That's all we get. We don't get any questions about, who is it who had did you ever have any conversations about Jeffrey Epstein and his role in intelligence? Did anyone speak to you at CIA? Did anyone speak to you at foreign intelligence services overseas about no evidentiary trail, no list of who spoke to him about these matters, no questioning about what was said. It was like it was set up to fail. And for that to be the end of the story. And then Alex Acosta disappeared after that. He was a high profile figure. He was the dean of a major law school, partner at a major firm, cabinet level secretary. Now he's a ghost. And so all of this is happening in the context of what appears to be complete lack of enthusiasm for finding out the answer. And this gets back to the question of how many folks in Trump world, might be is the reason there's no action on really trying to nail down answers around the intelligence side of this because there's no evidence, or because there's no appetite. And because they've not showed us any of the evidence that they've seen in order to make the determination, it's hard not to conclude it's because there's no appetite.
That's something that is unnervingly frustrating, Mike, that they didn't talk us through their process. They didn't show us their process here. After all of the yapping and all of the talking on TV, and they did a lot of talking on TV about it. The documents are all on my desk. So many files, a dump truck pulled up with Jeffrey Epstein evidence. They couldn't show us anything. And you brought up Bill Barr, and I just want to take a quick deviation here into the origin story of Jeffrey Epstein. Because it actually goes back to Bill Barr's father in such a strange way, who was one of the founding members of the CIA. And so if you're going to talk about the nodes of connection between Epstein and the CIA, let's go back to Donald Barr, who operated the OSS during World War II, which is, of course, where the CIA sprung from. Then he became the head of the Dalton School. Then he hired Jeffrey Epstein, in spite of the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was a failing student and didn't have a degree himself, groomed Jeffrey Epstein, and connected them with Ghislaine Maxwell. So it's actually Bill Barr's father who is the origin story of all of this. And also, and it's worth noting, wrote a book called Space Relations, where a group of elitist pedophiles run an entire planet through blackmail. And it sounds like a movie script, and it probably is. Does feel like we're living actually in a simulation at times, and here it is. There's the proof. So maybe you could take just a quick deviation here into what is Bill Barr's role in this operation. If you're going to talk about connections here that are going to be very uncomfortable, obviously, for some people in Trump world, is this background story check out, Mike? The floor is yours.
Yeah, that's one of the excuses that was sort of made for the DOJ the first time around, was that it was just such a patently obvious conflict of interest with Bill Barr that the thought process was with Matt Gaetz or Pam Bondi that we would be able to get more transparency because of the perception of Bill Barr doing the blocking and tackling the first time around. Jeffrey Epstein died on Bill Barr's watch. As you mentioned, Donald Barr goes back to the very origins of the CIA, and then Bill Barr started his career in the CIA. He actually, in his own biography, brags that he told his high school guidance counselor that what he wanted to be when he grew up was the director of the CIA. And then Bill Barr only became disenchanted with the CIA career when Stansfeld Turner, Jimmy Carter CIA director, who massively handicapped the CIA. This was during the Halloween massacre in 77, 78, when the CIA was basically handcuffed and then had massive staff reductions and budget cuts. And it was at that point that Bill Barr became disenchanted with the CIA and the activity and the direction from the Carter administration, and then went on to become a lawyer and then the head of the Justice Department twice. According to reporting from Terry Reid, one of the sort of mystery figures in the Iran-Contra scandal of the early 1980s under Reagan, Bill Barr was actively involved in Iran-Contra, the CIA gun running, money laundering, drug running operation of the early 1980s, and had a code name Robert Johnson. If you read the book Compromised by Terry Reid, which was written well before the Jeffrey Epstein affair ever popped off. This was basically a tell-all from the 1990s. And again, that's the same network involved in Jeffrey Epstein himself. As I mentioned, Jeffrey Epstein involved in the Iran-Contra affair through Adnan Khashoggi and through the Continental Air Services and Air America CIA proprietaries that were used in that operation that Epstein negotiated to come to Columbus, Ohio. And so you had an immediate conflict of interest with Bill Barr when Bill Barr said that Epstein killed himself, or that, the case was basically closed. I think a lot of people like myself said, well, what do you expect? You got the CIA's mop-up man as the head of the Justice Department, and his friggin' father worked directly with Epstein. There is a kind of inescapable like father, like son in these sorts of things. It tends to be a family business. And, but I don't know how much, for example, Pam Bondi was the attorney general of Florida. And Florida was the exact jurisdiction that Jeffrey Epstein spent his career in and was prosecuted in. And I don't know Pam Bondi. I've never met her. I'm not making any sort of accusations here. I just it's just awfully convenient that everyone seems to know each other on this. And so there's a very simple fix, which is show your work. Why can't we see, what Tulsi did with JFK files? A lot of people were upset that there was no smoking gun, for example, to be found in the March files for JFK. I was ecstatic about that. I thought that was one of the gold standard for how you do federal declassifications. Everything was fully unredacted. We got hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of files for independent researchers to add to our body of knowledge, even things that were, not directly related to, the assassination. We got all the Operation Mongoose files. The fact is the Epstein network is something that, given the extent of what we know from the criminal side, is something that we need answers about well beyond an FBI prosecution. And oftentimes, because of declassifications or because of court documents, even if you can't prove something criminally, what you can provide to the public, for example, like what is in a DOJ filing, provides kind of metadata, if you will. It's something that allows independent researchers to build on what's already known in order to make their own case if the DOJ feels they have insufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. But what's so curious about this is there wasn't even an attempt to do so. So I don't know how this DOJ can expect anything but long-term resentment and anger from the base when there isn't even an attempt to say, well, listen, we looked at everything. Here's what we looked at. And if you look at this too, you'll make the same conclusion. They didn't even do that second step. They just said, trust me, bro. And it's not there. Well, show me what you looked at so I can decide whether or not you're bullshitting me. I want to see what you looked at so that way I know what you didn't look at. If I know here are the 30,000 emails we looked at, we put them in a big Tulsi Gabbard, ODNI, JFK style, WikiLeaks style. You don't even need to index it for us. The internet will do the work. Show us what you queried, CIA. Tell us who you talked to. What were the names of the case officers? What conversations did you have with John Ratcliffe? What documents did you go back and look at from 2008? Are any of those declassifiable? If not, describe them or publish redacted forms and remove sources and methods. We want to know what you saw so that we agree with what you say. And you telling us what you saw will be helpful to know what you didn't see so that we can decide whether or not there's a cover up here instead of having to assume it.
Here's an image to your point. It's Jeffrey Epstein's safe. This image is taken, it's not AI, it's taken by the FBI, and the special agent in charge testified in court that manila envelope included many passports from different nations with Jeffrey Epstein's photograph, but not his real name. That's not child predation material. I don't need any more. I don't need any of that stuff like on the internet, right? Of course, none of that stuff should ever be on the internet. We're not asking to see any type of like horrible victimization photos. I don't want that. It's horrifying. It's despicable. It's wrong. Obviously, we don't need any of that. Why not just show us all the passports that he has? How does Jeffrey Epstein get a bunch of passports from different nations, pretty controlled operation there, without his real name on it? That's not taking advantage of any victim or any horrifying. Like you could just show us that. Next to it is a velvet box of diamonds. Well, where the hell those diamonds come from exactly? That's unique. Like, could you have just showed us some of that evidence? This is all just sitting there, stacks of physical evidence, Mike, that we know that we have. And it's all just sitting there. I get it. I don't want horrible images of like young victimized people on the internet ever. So I'm not calling for that. But you're betraying our intelligence and spitting in our faces to say that the tens of thousands, and here's some of them, the tens of thousands of hard drives and CDs that have these images on them don't include anyone. That there were no clients. That there were no other people on them.
The live recordings of Weezer concerts, actually. That's all.
That's right. You're insulting us. You're insulting us. Sure, some of them probably did have Epstein in them, and we already know he's a scumbag. Okay, got it. But like, could you release the names of the other people involved? Like none of it. You can't release even the passports. I guess what I'm saying, Mike, is you're right. They could just show us all the physical. Here's a bunch of physical evidence that we got in all of his homes and stuff. Here it is. Here's the emails. Here's why we're not charging anybody else. Here's all that we have. Maybe stuff's been destroyed. We're not sure. But we know that you have footage like this of his little St. James getting raided and us carrying out boxes. Right there. Pause it, please. That's a wrapped up MacBook tower that has terabytes of storage information, and they're wrapping it up for evidence. You can see it clear as day right there. Nobody ever like asked what's on that computer? You can't. That's a piece of physical evidence. Where is that computer exactly? Where does that exist? Like, can you show us that? We haven't seen anything. No pictures from the raid. We have seen no pictures from the Little St. James raid. So to your point, like it's eroding further the trust. And the JFK release was a masterclass. It was fascinating. There was actually quite a bit of like juicy and very embarrassing stuff we talked about on the show. And so I'm left to ask this final question, Mike. It's the last question that I have for today. The last question we have time for today. Is this a noble lie? Is this a grenade that had the pin pulled and has been ticking and is now smoldering and has been handed to so many people so far down the line, and it just gets dropped in the lap of Bongino and Cash, and before it explodes, they just got to duck and cover? Is that what's happening here? What is your final takeaway for this?
This is going to sound a little strange, but I almost wish it was the noble lie. At least people put effort into it. You know, when there's a noble lie, there's usually, a lot more work that goes into the cover up that at least attempts to deal with the underlying public pushback. In this case, I mean, let me just make a recommendation, I guess, to the Trump admin, because they're doing so much good work, and they're going to get pilloried for this, and kind of rightly with the rollout. But it's not to take away. I don't want anybody else in the job at FBI. I don't want the MAGA base to because neither Cash nor Dan need to be doing this. They're taking a major haircut. They're taking all the flack. It's a thankless job. They deserve us saying thank you for all the great stuff they've done to end present day weaponization. The thing is, this Epstein thing just gets to the heart and soul of what the American people, it's kind of the perfect embodiment of government, of perceptions of government corruption, because this feeling that elites can get away with anything.
Yes.
They could even, traffic children in broad daylight with a friggin' Disney island. And if they know the prosecutors, or they're connected to intelligence, or they're, donors to politicians, they are above the law. And for the law department, our Justice Department, to handle it this way, it almost makes it impossible for the admin to get credit for the good stuff they do, because people will just, losses loom larger than gains. And my recommendation on this is, why not have a task force, a public task force, every Friday, take questions from the public. Let Benny Johnson, let random independent journalists, let mainstream media journalists take an hour every Friday for the next 6 months and call it the Epstein Investigation Task Force, and take our questions, be responsive to them, follow up. And because here's the other part of this is, everyone knows that the people who know the most about any criminal investigation are not the heads of the Justice Department or FBI or CIA. It's just not. The CIA is busy dealing with Ukraine and Russia and Iran and Israel. The FBI is busy dealing with fentanyl and ICE riots. The DOJ is busy with the friggin' civil rights division reform. Pam Bondi is not the keeper of knowledge on this. But we know that, or at least there should be, case officers, investigators who are the ones who are in these files day and night. Have the most knowledgeable person from the DOJ, from FBI, from CIA, have them meet us, the public, time box it. Say, listen, we're not going to take up the whole admin on this Epstein thing. We're trying to do a million other things, but we're going to give you 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is, and answer our questions live. Put yourself on, like, if you really stand behind this, you should be able to do what Trump does and take our questions live. We knew that, Biden stopped. He disappeared. No one knew where he was for the entire final year of his presidency. Everyone knew that's because he wouldn't be able to handle our questions. Kamala Harris turned down Joe Rogan interview, biggest interview in the world, because being there, taking the questions for that long, Probably couldn't stand the heat in the kitchen. If you really stand behind your findings, you would talk to us. So set up a task force and talk to us. Then there's no hiding behind, you can't expect the head of the agency to know this. She's got so much else to do. Okay, send us your best man or woman. Put the top investigator that you have on the inside. Show it to us on the outside. That way, when we ask questions, we know we're getting the best answers available, not a political document designed to make us go away.
I mean, these documents are available. The problem is that they're in total conflict with each other. The FBI special agent in charge testified, listen, there was an entire control room in New York where Jeffrey Epstein could operate all of the hidden cameras. There were over 171 hidden cameras in one little mansion, I think funded by the State Department or owned by the State Department. Very strange there.
Yes,
is that
that's
correct?
right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he got a State
Amazing.
Department when the U.S. government seized the second largest residential building in New York from the government of Iran. They leased it immediately to Jeffrey Epstein, who then subleased it to the attorney from the Pizza Connection and French Connection drug cartel cases.
Totally normal, Mike. I call that a Tuesday afternoon. That's what I do. I don't know what you do, how you spend your working days, but that's what I do. I seize government properties from Iran and then lease it through the State Department.
State Department's your landlord. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mike, for your clarity on this and for your wise advice. I really hope the administration takes that advice. We certainly are taking that advice. You'll see a series here, Mike, that we're going to be launching where we take these principles and we have live questions from the audience. We're going to go and do live streams, and we're going to do exactly this. We're going to go into their offices, and we're going to do live questions from the audience. And we're going to promote it and hype it so that people can come in, and then those questions will be asked live from the chat. And that's like a way to show transparency. Nobody ever questions Trump on this stuff because Trump's standing there 4 or 5 hours a day taking questions. I asked Trump 5 questions last week in Alligator Alcatraz. And he was waiting. He was excited to answer literally anything you throw at him. Hungry alligator. And nobody ever questions him on that stuff. Like, that's why he has such faith and confidence with people. But this is, you're right. There's an absolute crisis of confidence in this. And we hope it gets better. I have a feeling we'll be seeing more of it. And I have a feeling you'll be seeing a lot more of Mike Benz when you follow him right here. He's got that sweet 1M followers. You got to follow Mike Benz on X. Possibly one of the fastest growing X accounts out there, in fact. Mike, again, happy belated birthday. Godspeed. Thank you for telling the truth, man.
Thank you, Benny. You too.